Hello there, everybody. It's me, Garrett Kidney, the co-host of You've Got to Be Kidding Me on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
And I am Liam Jones, my full name, and I'm also a part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network as a co-host for You've Got to Be Kidding Me.
We are a TNA history podcast that covers TNA 1 month at a time. We cover all the drama, all the matches, all the Vince Russo nonsense you could ever want in your life.
Have you heard of TNA? I bet you have, but would it be funnier if two people made jokes over it the whole time? Probably.
So if that sounds like fun to you, check it out on this very Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, and Liam will do bits and whatnot.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hey there, Thunder Buddies and Travelers down Thunder Road. It's us, Days of Thunder, the WCW Thunder rewatch podcast that you didn't ask for, but we did anyway, coming as part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network and powered by largemanapears.com. It's me, your party host, your New Year's resolution on Thunder Road, Dave Ryan, and I'm joined, as I am every week, by my faithful co-host, he's Staggerly Malone. Lee, how are you?
I am good. It's a new year.
Yeah.
I'm caffeinated. I'm awake.
Yes. Which has been a concern sometimes for you. You're a sleepy boy.
Listen, it's hard being me. I've been saying this for years. Nobody believes me.
It's tough at the top.
It is. It's tough when you're almost perfect.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I'm happy to be here. Another year of Days of Thunder. We've made it to, what's this, 6th year?
Yeah, we're in around the end of January is like our 5-year anniversary, so we're coming into our 6th year of this.
Yeah. Are we going to do the WWE math of
you do this to me every now and then where I'm just like, how long have we been doing this?
See, I remember it was Christmas 2019 when we started the
yeah, so it's actually we've done 6 years, so we're heading into our 7th year, which is funny because like all our specials and all our different dumb ideas have extended. When we came up with this show, we did project how long into the future we would be suffering if we were to commit to doing all of it. And at the time, it was around 7 years, I said, is how long it would take. And by the time we get to the 7-year anniversary of the podcast, we won't even be finished with 2000 yet.
No,
we'll only be in the like autumn of 2000, or like late summer, early autumn of 2000. So we're probably closer to 9 years of podcasting by the time we're just done with WCW. That's before you even talk about the invasion.
Yeah, God. Yeah, so like a loveless marriage, this podcast will just have to continue on.
We're just doing it for the kids. Yeah. being the Thunder Buddies, of course. But look, no, I'm happy to be back, and we were talking a little bit off the air about how like it is nice, like returning to the fold, returning to the recording studio. Now that we are we're firmly in men of a certain age territory. You know, you being firmly ensconced, a decade plus of daddom, and me about to enter it. There's a certain amount of grumpiness, cantankerousness that comes along with that, and
absolutely,
we're absolutely into the age of you have to make an active effort to keep in touch with friends and things like that. I was just speaking to a young person in work today that was just like they were struggling with I feel like I'm kind of getting lost in the shuffle with a huge group of friends. I was like, how many friends are in your social circle? And he's like, about 25. I was like,
Ooh, that won't last.
Like that's not gonna, like, I'm sorry. that just doesn't happen for people after a certain age. Like, if that group is that big 3 months from now, I'll be surprised, let alone by the time he's finished school. I was like, when I started college, like, around the breakfast table, the first day I started in university, there was 20 of us. In the close group of friends, and then the kind of ancillary friends of friends kind of group. And like, by the time I finished my 3-year degree, just the undergrad, never mind how many peeled off after that same group was down to 4, 5. You know, you pick up other people along the way, obviously, in different social circles. But anyway, my point in saying that was that, like, in our autumn years, in our dotage, Lee, it is nice to have an excuse like this to actually catch up with each other. Because now that we've, like, since all the wrong-uns came out of the woodwork over COVID, and we don't go to shows together twice a month anymore, like, generally I don't know who or when I'd catch up with anybody, yourself included.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, like, especially, like, because I more or less quit using the Twitter as it used to be, so I don't, like, generally interact with people that we used to see, like you say, twice a week.
Yeah.
Or twice a month, sorry, not twice a week, twice a month. So, like, it's crazy that, like we talk many times a month.
Yeah.
But yet we will see each other maybe twice a year.
We've probably seen each other about a half dozen times since the pandemic started.
Yeah.
Like, and that might be generous. So, and it's one of those things that, like, if you told your parents' generation this, like, that you'd have a close friend that you spoke to, like, we probably speak almost every day.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like, in terms of in person, apart from that, like, the, famous, I've talked about it before on the show, the dodgy hard drive exchange at a train station car park near my house a few months ago. Yeah, it would be weird for a lot of people to think, like, how do they hang out when, like, they don't ever see each other, even though you work in the same town I live in. But we're just passing ships. Yeah, it's look, the benefits of technology and WCW that allow us to do these things.
Listen, WCW brings many people together.
Yeah. Anyway, I suppose, like, we'll kind of like, I was gonna start moving into WCW, but I just, like, have to. I subjected myself to the Raw debut on Netflix this week, like, against my better judgment.
Well, you're saying this week, but by the time this show goes out, it will have been the previous week.
This is true. This is very true. I need to get on top of my own scheduling a bit better.
You do.
But, yeah, it was one of those things where I'm like, I generally speaking, because of how awful and obnoxious the product is, like, I don't ever watch WWE anymore. Like, I watched... I've said before, like, it blows my mind if you had told me as a kid that one day I would have, like, the access to every WWE show live at the touch of a button and would barely be arsed watching WrestleMania. Do you know what I mean? But that's how I was by like, look, I'd been tapering off since the start of the pandemic, but, like, I think last year was the first one where I'd become so disgusted with the people running the company and so turned off by the product on the TV that it was the first year I haven't watched the full entirety of WrestleMania ever. But I'll still find myself kind of interest piqued in a morbid kind of way by historical moments, and I do think there was some historical significance to the move to Netflix. Like, I wasn't one of these people for a single second that thought, oh, look, they're going to win me back, because, like, they have so long unmoored themselves from anything resembling professional wrestling that I love.
So are you telling me you didn't tune in for one of the biggest, most important wrestling matches in the history of the sport, CM Punk versus Seth Rollins?
No. I didn't even stay watching the show for that long. Because that was the main event, it ended up, wasn't it? I got through 2 hours and just threw in the towel.
So that was
like,
what? That was what, Triple H's promo, Rock's promo, and a Roman Reigns match?
Essentially, yeah, because it was like 4 matches across 3 hours, which is like, I will try to remember this and never complain again, like when we have a 9-match Thunder in 2 hours, because like, boy howdy, I'd much prefer that pacing to this. Yeah, I'm kind of just like, man, like there's that trend on Twitter of those, what happened to this game I loved. It was just another one of those stark reminders. Like, instead of being I would have at least thought they'd make a stronger play to like win back old fans. Like, I don't mean necessarily me who's disengaged in recent years. I mean more like the people who disengaged many years ago. People who just thought, oh, wrestling's on Netflix now, I'll check in on what's happening with that. And yeah, like, they started with The Rock, like, but
no, they did not start with The Rock.
Sorry, no, they didn't.
They did not start with The Rock.
Dramatic curtain drop and Uncle Paul, the shy retiring wallflower that he is, getting his pop. Yeah, no, it just, I think the one thing where I was like, okay, that's pretty cool in all of 2 hours was they used drones for a couple of shots where like they went from up and outside the arena to inside the building, inside the concourse, into the main bowl of the arena in one continuous tracking shot. But I'm just like, at the same time, one camera shot is not going, okay, Raw is good. Because this is the other thing, like, I feel like Mugatu in Zoolander sometimes, like, I'm taking crazy pills, because the amount of people who, until relatively recently, I thought had something resembling credibility or taste in wrestling, who are, without a shred of irony, tweeting things about, oh, like, Raw is cooking. And stuff. I'm just sitting there going, this is awful. It's awful. And, like, if WWE was, like, if it wasn't so goddamn popular right now, inexplicably to me, like, I don't think you'd be saying this. Like, they're doing a lot of the same things that people were slating them for 4 or 5 years ago. But, like, people are getting, like, really won over by this little bit of a sheen of paint on it all. Like, there's a little, in some sense, in some cases, there's a little bit of semi-logical booking now that didn't exist, but it's not enough. And there's new camera angles and things like that, like I said, that Kevin Dunn wasn't doing, but that's not enough. You know what I mean? Like, it's never... The other thing as well is, like, they've never been... Two things that really rang home the last couple of weeks of Raw for the first week on Netflix, and a clip I saw from the week before, right? Firstly, they have never been more... even with Vince, who hated the word wrestling, didn't want to be in the wrestling business, I've never felt that they're more embarrassed about it being wrestling. Like, that whole opening video package on Raw being like, guys, it's fake, by the way. It's fake. We know it's fake, so don't worry about it.
I have never been so pissed off at watching something.
I'm more embarrassed by that than I am embarrassed by people knowing I'm a wrestling fan.
Yeah, I would sit through 100 Godfather matches with the whole train in front of my fucking granny.
Yeah.
Then to have to sit through that fucking 3-minute video.
Yeah.
It's all about the face and the heel. And it's a work and a shoot. And wrestling.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, fuck off.
The other thing as well is that, like, they have never been more desperate and more insecure about making you think this is a great era of programming. So, like, The Rock did his promo on NXT about, like, just being rattled about people going, oh, well, like, he just blew off the only 2 stories that people were interested in on a main event level, like him and Roman and him and Cody. Like, he just blew them off nonsensically on Monday night. And he had to comment on it. Couldn't wait 24 hours. So fucking thin-skinned.
So good.
We're telling stories. Just enjoy the ride the Rock is taking you on. And then there was a comment, I think on Raw. It's either on Raw or in an interview. Oh, no, it was on Raw. And then he talked about it in an interview as well the previous week. Drew was talking about how this is the greatest in-ring era of all time. And I'm like, I think in a very technical sense, there has never been a higher bar for talent on their active roster. I think that's probably like unquestionably true. Mm-hmm. But you know what the thing about great eras in any television, let alone pro wrestling, is they don't have to tell you. They don't have to tell you how great it is. Mm-hmm. And that's a symptomatic of the, like, who was it I was talking about? Somebody I was talking about in the staff Slack for VOW about how there are certain people, there are a lot of people actually on the roster. Actually, was it Yeet Man? It could have been main event Jey Uso, where they just told you he's over for so long that their fans just went, well, I guess he's over. And like, he's inexplicably, like, if you just tuned in for the first time, you would think he was stone cold with the reactions he was getting. And it's like, you have to be a little bit nuanced about actually looking at crowds during the matches and realizing that, like, the crowds know where they're supposed to cheer and where they're supposed to boo. Like, they're a part of the show, which is fine to a certain extent, but there's no investment. There's no, like, these people are gripped by this.
That you're old enough to remember this, Dave, but do you remember when...
Are you going to say George Hackenschmidt?
WWE first bought WCW, and the first couple of, like, DVD releases they had shit all over WCW for going to Disney and having the guy come out with the boo and yay sign?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what they do with their audience now.
That's also all they've ever wanted. Like, even when they used to say that, I always suspected there was a
jealousy.
hint of jealousy about it. Yeah, that, like, they've wanted nothing more than full and total control. And look, they've got it.
I don't know who it was, whether it was Rich or Joe on the flagship, that said about the Thunderdome. Vince has now seen this. This is all he's ever going to want now.
Yeah.
And you know what? 5 years on, they were fucking right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the greatest things they should thank AEW for is that it finally shook them loose of the last few fans that would protest anything they did. Mm-hmm. You know? Anyway, that's that misery. I actually generally I watched that 2 hours of Raw the night before I started watching everything for this recording session we're doing. And I tell you, it made everything we watched zip the fuck by, because even and I suppose it's a thing I think about with AEW, where I still watch most things AEW put out, because there is some emotion, some investment, even at the worst of times. Even I find AEW's failures to be more interesting than WWE's successes. You know?
Mm. Like, don't get me wrong, AEW infuriates me, but it infuriates me because I care.
Yeah. And because when it's good, it's what we envision pro wrestling to be, you know? Yeah. Anyway, let's move towards this episode of Thunder, the first of 2025. This is Thunder, episode 96, from Evansville, Indiana, the 19th of January 2000. It's a 2.3 rating. We are down 0.3 week over week. So that is, we are heading back down towards that 2 flat area that they were in a little while before Russo. Good job, mate. Now, folks, I said this to Lee off the air, and if you tuned in to the Sold Out episode, I hope you did. I was very happy with that episode. I thought it was very good programming.
Some very good feedback on that. So a lot of people enjoyed it.
Yeah, so if you listen to that, you'll know this was a historic week in all the wrong ways for WCW yet again. And I have a sizable chunk of The Observer to read out, because WCW once again is the cover story in The Observer. So I
feel like WCW is going to be the cover story in The Observer for probably at least 48 of the next 52 weeks.
Yeah, we may have to start breaking out the Observer segment into its own show because that's how long. Like, this cover story is 8 pages long. I will try and skip through some things that are not as relevant, but unfortunately this is one of those weeks where like 2 or 3 massive things happened. All of them were WCW and all of them need to be talked about. Mm-hmm. We did the Cliff Notes on Sold Out, talked about it for a little while. Essentially, this is the week where Jeff Jarrett gets hurt. Bret Hart finally stops wrestling, having sustained the injury he would ultimately retire from. And of course, to cap it all off, Vince Russo gets fired. Now we have some of the details, some of which we touched on the Sold Out show, some of which we didn't. So let's just get into it. Lee, please stop me where you feel like chipping in to give me a bit of a breather. Give yourself the office whenever you feel like it. The most tumultuous 4-day period in the recent history of World Championship Wrestling started with WCW getting the word that an injury would cause champion and main eventer Bret Hart to miss the sold-out pay-per-view. As the dominoes started falling one by one, it ended with a new booker, the crowning of a new champion who asked to be released from the company anyway, and his vacating the title voluntarily some 18 hours later, and possibly with several wrestlers leaving the company. That's the other thing I forgot to say in my intro. The fucking Radicals are gone.
Yeah, I thought you were purposely leaving that out.
Yeah, for Bill Bush, who is running WCW, this week will probably become his sink or swim as far as what the end result regarding his respect both in and out of wrestling based on his handling of a chaotic situation which was still ongoing at press time. It all started when WCW was told officially late on Thursday or early Friday. So this is one of those where you cut WCW a little bit of slack. They found out from Bret's doctor on Thursday night, when the pay-per-view was on Sunday. They diagnosed his severe migraine and inability to focus as the result of a severe concussion, and not only ruled out wrestling on the pay-per-view, but even flying in for television this week or doing any lifting this week. Hart was hopeful of being able to fly in for the Los Angeles, Las Vegas tapings on 124, 125, but he wouldn't be able to wrestle at those shows. He was scheduled for another exam this week to determine an estimated time he medically cleared to wrestle, but it is believed to be 3 weeks minimum. As shown on the pay-per-view, it is believed the concussion stemmed from the Starrcade match on 12/19 when Goldberg kicked him extremely hard with a sidekick, although Hart took a bad hit when Goldberg didn't hold his leg while he executed the ring post figure 4, causing the back of his head to crash on the floor while executing the move. Hart had continued to wrestle since that point, but was not himself and recognised days later he had a concussion, but kept working, not realising how severe it was until seeing a doctor about it Thursday morning. This left WCW in the position without a main event and a world title match to headline the pay-per-view a few days later. Things were compounded when Jeff Jarrett contacted the company on Friday, saying he also had a concussion stemming from taking the splash off the cage from Jimmy Snuka the previous Monday, which we talked about on Sold Out. Jarrett also wrestled the day after the concussion. What the fuck was... Like, I know concussions weren't taken the way they are now, but holy shit, like, it still is galling to read. It's like, oh, they definitely got a concussion, knew they had a concussion, and still hopped back in the ring the following day. Like, one, that they were willing to, and two, that no one stopped them, is still a bit galling.
Your brain was rattled last night. Let's get in there and just take it easy, do a couple of bumps. Like, what the fuck?
So he wrestled the day after the concussion, working a tag team match on Thunder, and had water on the brain and wouldn't be able to wrestle in his scheduled 3 matches against Chris Benoit. Just like that, the entire meat of the card, which was going to most likely do, and for that matter appears to have ended up doing, one of the 2 worst buy rates in the history of the company, was gone. The decision was made to strip Hart of the title and crown a new champion on the pay-per-view. Vince Russo's idea was to do a Battle Royal or a Royal Rumble on the show and end with a surprise champion, Tank Abbott. There was a lot of internal unhappiness with Russo's booking and television for many weeks, but the belief was still that he'd have to be given 6 months to prove whether his ideas would play, even though many in upper management were of the opinion that his concept of wrestling was not working and wouldn't work, and his quick blow-offs of angles on television was doing pay-per-view and house shows no favours. This is the other thing, often the maxim of you watch the house shows. What are your live crowds doing? And live crowds are cratering for WCW right now. There were also the complaints that the people featured the most on television during the TV shows, whether they be wrestlers or non-wrestlers, were not people who were going on the road, which was killing the house show business in competition with WWF, which sends every able-bodied wrestler on the road. And for that matter, even ECW, which features on its house shows virtually all the same people it pushes on television. And that makes sense. Like, if you are watching WCW and you're a huge Goldberg guy, or you're a huge Nash guy, or, you know, you name it, big name WCW, you're a big, Sting before you went out kind of guy. And then you go to the house shows and you're getting Hugh Morris. Mm-hmm. You know, like, it's only going to take a couple of sweeps through your town of being bait and switched before, like, you know, fool me once, shame, you know, like, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing.
When you think about, like, when Macho Man, Hogan, Nash, Sid, Goldberg, when that whole kind of, they were the top line in the summer. Mm-hmm. Who do you think was main event in the house shows? Because it wasn't any of them.
Yeah.
It was probably fucking Sid versus Scott Steiner or fucking whoever the fuck.
Yeah. Sid, in fairness, like, has been, from what I've seen on Cage Match from looking up different things, Sid keeps coming up as doing house show loops. Mm-hmm.
Like Sid Rick Steiner was probably fucking main event in house shows at one point. Like,
it's interesting. We will talk about people being replaced in house shows, and I'd say to his credit as well, like, Brett was doing house shows when he was fit. But again, that seems to be like the values of the man. I'd say he was somebody who took it as point of pride that he wanted to do some. Anyway, while the idea of making Abbott champion was not the reason for the demotion, it was symptomatic of destroying the foundation of the product and titles in Vince Russo's change in concept of what pro wrestling is. A concept not favoured by those in management who wanted the soap operas in addition to good wrestling matches, and felt that was also, based on the reaction of what the fans wanted, since management had gotten little positive fan reaction or positive numbers feedback to the product in recent weeks. Second guessing of the decision by Bush to hire him had gone back many weeks, and not all due to what most wrestlers in the company felt for weeks was Kevin Sullivan was trying to get the booking position by constantly pointing out where things weren't working, which in fact for the most part they weren't. Bush's ideas were to continue employing Russo on a booking committee that would put more focus on the wrestling product, but where his Russo's ideas could be funneled by those with more background in wrestling, similar to how Vince McMahon edited Russo's ideas in the WWF. The Abbott decision, as well as the decision to make Oklahoma, co-writer Ed Ferreira, the Cruiserweight champion, which ended up still happening on the pay-per-view, but was dropped 2 days later, and not change the tag team titles from David Flair and Crowbar, which ended up going to an equally well-regarded by the fans main event caliber tag team of Big Vito and Johnny the Bull. We'll talk about that in a while. Basically rendering all of those belts meaningless, led to a showdown internally on Friday, with Russo being removed from his final decision-making position. Russo, who had 21 months left on a 2-year incentive-based contract, was invited to stay with the company as part of a booking committee, which would have included Sullivan, J.J. Dillon and Terry Taylor. Bob Mould, who had just quit the company a few weeks earlier because of frustration due to Russo and he having philosophical differences of what pro wrestling was, and his ideas generally not being used, was also brought back. Kevin Nash, who Bush described as his best friend amongst the wrestlers, danger,
yeah,
was also given increased power as a liaison of sorts. And let me tell you, when we get into Thunder, it's clearly fucking obvious that Nash has some stroke again. This man, if his foot wasn't already off the gas before the pay-per-view, this man is in full taking the piss mode once more on this episode of Thunder. A decision that was not popular among what appears to be the majority of wrestlers, although the heat on Nash was almost non-existent compared to that with Sullivan, even though the company's track record when Sullivan had power was far better than when Nash had power. Russo had not, as of the weekend, declined the offer, but the comments he'd made to Manny during this period led them to believe he was leaning towards leaving the company. However, both Ferreira and Bill Banks, who Russo brought with him from the WWF to help write and put together TV shows, agreed to stay with the company with diminished powers as television writers. Ferreira still thought Russo would stay as a member of the committee, but not if Sullivan was on the committee. Banks asked to be reassigned from writing television to working on the magazine and internet site, but was talked into staying as a television writer. Next on the agenda was how to change the card. Numerous plans were thrown around. WCW, on its website on Friday, was far more honest than WWF was in a similar situation with Steve Austin at Survivor Series, announcing very shortly after getting word that neither Hart nor Jarrett would be on the show, that the world title will be decided on the show, and that the US title will be decided on at a later date. Because that's the other thing as well. You forget that Jeff Jarrett was US champion.
Mm-hmm.
They first announced they would have a new main event with Vicious against someone for the vacant title, and Vicious's opponent will be announced at 7 p.m. on Friday. But with the problems with Russo going on, that deadline came and went. Here's some fun. By Friday night, Randy Savage, whose contract had expired on 1/14, was asked to replace Bret Hart in the main event of the house show at Charleston, West Virginia against Sid Vicious. The plan on Friday afternoon seemed to be to put the title on Ric Flair at the pay-per-view, with a finish where Arn Anderson would hit Vicious with an object and give Flair the win in heel fashion, and to bring both Hulk Hogan and Savage back, Hogan on Nitro on 1/17 and Savage as a surprise on the pay-per-view. However, at a meeting with Hogan, the original plan seemed to be leaning towards, before all this, where he'd return in a big singles match with a heel Flair on 2/14 in the unopposed Nitro. What a worker.
Yeah.
From the Nassau Coliseum. Hogan himself had talked of later turning heel to work with Bill Goldberg soon after Goldberg's return to the ring in March. Both sides were far apart on money. Hogan apparently expecting a similar deal to the one Eric Bischoff had cut him, which at one point had his marketability did prove to justify, but it in no way does today. Savage and management were also far apart on money. Technically, while putting the title on Ric Flair was strongly discussed, including the scenario where Arn Anderson as referee would hit Sid with an object, it was never formally offered to him. And by the end of the day, the plan was decided not to waste the potential big quarter hour for Flair's return on a Nitro that could be hyped for a month by debuting him on a pay-per-view that was going to die no matter what. While WCW was honest to the hardcore fans on the web, the same can't be said towards the masses. WCW Saturday Night still had the voiceovers taped on late Friday. On that show, 1:15, they were all still advertising and heavily pushing the original card with Hart versus Vicious and Benoit versus Jarrett's 3 matches. Despite the company having knowledge none of those matches would be taking place. At this point, the new plan was for no announcement to be made before the show, only that Commissioner Terry Funk would announce the surprise challenger right before the match. The booking idea at this point went along the lines of Funk would then lose to Kevin Nash, who would take over as commissioner immediately. Nash would announce the top contender as Scott Hall, but that it would turn out that Hall was drinking in Orlando, and Nash would then say the number 2 contender gets the shot and then declare himself the number 2 contender and beat Vicious and become commissioner and champion in one night. Nash turned that down. Yeah. This I've actually never heard. I've never heard. This is insane.
So they wanted, first of all, they wanted Kevin Nash to work twice in one night.
I mean, yeah.
And secondly, they were going to have him go over not only Terry Funk in a hardcore match, but then beat top babyface Sid as well.
While also bringing back the Scott Hall as a drunk storyline.
Wow.
Yeah. It's so insane, but also the next sentence is that Nash turned it down.
I know, yeah.
Like, to have a booking idea so dumb that you managed to make, hey Nash, we're going to make you commissioner and world champion, but it's such a hokey scenario that even Kevin Nash is like, guys, pump the brakes here. Come on. He turned it down, feeling that with his increased formal power, the last thing he needed to do, without the rest of the wrestlers totally resenting him and morale going into the toilet, was to become TV commissioner and world champion the very day it was announced of his new power. Smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because there will be, this is the thing, even though like Dave is laying out here, it wasn't Nash's idea, it was like, you know, Sullivan and the committee, right? And Bill Bush or whoever else was in the room, right? Kevin Nash is smart enough to know that there would be no way to convince a single wrestler in this company it wasn't his idea.
Yeah, like everyone's going to be aware that he has Bush in his pocket already.
Yeah. Of course, as it turns out, he'll probably have the belt in a week anyway, so the decision was made to go with Benoit, which WCW announced on its website on Saturday night but failed to give any other update as to changes for the rest of the card. What management hadn't counted on was not only that Russo was far more popular than Sullivan, but that Sullivan had made so many strong enemies, with the feeling being he was directly responsible for several of the wrestlers being stuck in the middle of the card, and the lazier and generally older wrestlers keeping their top spots. Sullivan can be blamed for that when it happened on his watch, but that situation continued with every booker in the company for recent years. Russo was generally liked by the wrestlers personally, although the general feeling was his work up to that point was a big disappointment, an opinion that also changed in some circles for the better when faced with the idea of Sullivan being in power. It's like, oh, we don't like this, but fuck, we don't want that guy either.
Here's the thing, Dave. They had another option.
Quit.
Which was to just not give the book back to Kevin Sullivan, give it to somebody else.
Yeah, there's only two people on, or there's only three people on Earth. It's either Russo, Sullivan, or back to Nash again, I guess. There was a general feeling that management had promised him 6 months and pulled the plug after only 3, which wasn't fair to him as a person, having just moved his family to Atlanta. At the same time, his idea to put the titles on Abbott, who doesn't have the in-ring experience to do more than about a 2-minute match and hasn't developed into a strong pro wrestling interview, nor was he over yet with the fans, although the one-punch knockout gimmick probably will get him over shortly. Oklahoma, who was a joke, and the tag title mess involving Flair was a disaster that had started. In addition, Russo was being viewed as inflexible when it came to ideas. In some cases, being inflexible did nobody any good, such as not agreeing to do a dark match main event after the TV taping when Nitro went to 2 hours, and putting babyfaces over at the end of the show. WWF always puts the babyfaces over at the end of a house show, even if it means adding a post-show angle at a TV taping, to send the fans home happy instead of unhappy, as they have been usually leaving WCW tapings for various reasons, thus hurting return business in those markets. Few, even his supporters among the wrestlers, agreed with his basic concept of wrestling. In particular, while TV numbers realistically had stayed about even since he arrived, a brief small increase followed by a recent small decrease, and the product on TV was on occasions good in recent weeks and overall better than during the previous Nash regime, which dug the company into this hole. The Starrcade pay-per-view number coming out at about a 0.3 was nothing short of disastrous for a show he had 10 weeks of television to push, and was the company's traditional biggest event of the year, built around the company's biggest star, Bill Goldberg, chasing the title. The poor buy rate was largely due to an almost non-existent job hyping the main event, which we talked about, how it's somehow, even though he had that 10-week of run-in, still felt fucking thrown together for a Starrcade. Many of the house show figures were becoming embarrassing. Russo had been very unlucky booking with so many injuries to constantly work around, in particular the Goldberg injury, but the company itself needed to recognise that many of the injuries were avoidable, that the Goldberg and Jarrett ones standing out because wrestlers never should have been put in positions that led to these injuries. The top star in the company shouldn't be punching through limo windows, even with a hidden gimmick, because broken glass is dangerous, and the injury risk in the spot that hurt Jarrett was too high. While some excuses can be made about the sins of the past haunting the company in the present, and there is truth to that, it ignores that if Russo had put together a concept and programs that fans were interested in, the house show business would have been the first place where the turnaround would be noticeable, and it wasn't there at all. And if Russo was able to get one personality over truly, it would have statistically shown, because the merchandise business would have improved if only t-shirt sales for that one performer getting over. Instead, merchandise business was reaching new lows each successive week. Whew. Now we get to the final element of things here. Long before Russo was replaced, several wrestlers had not so privately talked about banding together against Sullivan, who for whatever reasons, different reasons in the case of each specific individual, was seen as the person who would eventually get Russo's job, although the belief was this was not soon. The heat with Benoit, who lives with Sullivan's former wife Nancy, and the couple are expecting their first child shortly, so the personal heat between the two, ironically mirroring a prior pro wrestling angle booked by Sullivan, is intense. Benoit felt that when Sullivan was in power before, he sabotaged his career. And Dave adds the note, remember Benoit's famous losing streak for almost 1 year on pay-per-view when Sullivan was in control, and Benoit felt there was no way he could work under Sullivan under any circumstances. Benoit's longtime friends dating back to the New Japan days, Dean Malenko and Eddie Guerrero, had pretty well decided from day one that they'd always stick together. Perry Saturn and Shane Douglas had also become close with Benoit based on working together over the past year. The talk that Sullivan would get Russo's spot had been going on internally for weeks, and those who were friendly with Russo and some who just simply liked Russo because they hated Sullivan more had urged him to use his power while he had it to cut Sullivan out of power. Russo's response seemed to be along the lines that he could handle the situation. On Saturday, a group of what is believed to be 15 to 20 wrestlers were expected to confront Bush the next afternoon before the show, and all as a group asked for contract releases as a protest against Sullivan being named Booker.
Ooh.
Saturn was the most adamant, since Bush stated at a meeting when he took over as the man in charge that if anyone was unhappy working with the company, he'd give their full release. Being wrestling, about half that group that had promised to stick together the previous day had already changed its mind by the next day. There didn't appear to be any hard feelings over that amongst the group that did risk their jobs, being the realization if that many wrestlers quit at once, many wouldn't be able to find new jobs.
So that would give credence to the story that it was the four Radicals, Douglas, Conan, Ray, and didn't we say Hoovy we think was the other one?
You were, well, Dave's just about to say it.
Yeah.
It wound up with Benoit, Saturn, Malenko, Douglas, Guerrero, Conan, and Billy Kidman.
Oh, Kidman. Okay.
Going to Bush as a group and asking for either their release or Sullivan to be taken off the booking committee. Conan said he was also speaking to Hoovy and Ray, both of whom weren't at the pay-per-view due to not being booked on the card due to injury. The next day, Hoovy, Psychosis, and Ray talked with Bush. None asked for the release, but they all said if the rest of the group left, they wanted to leave with them. Psychosis, sorry, I'm trying to work through Dave using shoot names here. Yeah. Guerrero, no, it's Psychosis and Ray have worked together with Conan, dating back to when they were teenagers, training in Tijuana together, working small-time events in SoCal, through becoming superstars with AAA, later ECW, ending up to WCW. Bush at this point was in a tough position since he'd literally just given the job to Sullivan, and a change due to pressure from wrestlers in the long run would leave the company in chaos because the wrestlers, whenever they got unhappy, which is routine in the business, would try the same, which is very true. There is that kind of like, if he'd already made the decision, he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't.
It's that whole player power thing. You can't just acquiesce to the players.
Bush, and this is kind of spectacular, we're like, you're supposed to be running this company, mate, how do you not know this? Bush was said to be unaware that all of this was about to happen before it did. Like, again, this is like if he was just reading Dave or Wade at the time, he would know how many people hated Sullivan. He didn't know that there was this much heat on Sullivan, which was not a good sign since it had already been reported as going to happen on several websites. So this protest was reported online and at least one radio show, which I have to assume is Observer Live.
I feel like if a lot more wrestling executives actually talked to Dave and Wade, like spoke to them, they would know a lot more about what was going on in their companies.
Bush said to the first group before the pay-per-view to give him 1 week to smooth things over, but did not go so far as to say he would give them full releases if they were still unhappy. At one point, Benoit was going to, since he believed he was leaving, not accept the title. The feeling was it was best for all concerned because as champion that had just been put over for the title, it gave him at least some leverage since nobody else in the group had a current top position. It does make one question the decision to still give him the title after he'd asked for his release, but it appears to be a management feeling that he'd be a mark for the belt and that Sullivan in the beginning would be particularly politically, for Sullivan's own survival, under scrutiny, be forced to push Benoit to the moon despite whatever personal feelings there might be. So they thought that they would trap both of them into having to work together by giving Benoit the belt. That like Benoit would have to stay because he was a mark for the belt, and that Sullivan goes, well, he's the champion, so I have to fucking push him.
Yeah, because forcing people to work together always works well.
Yeah. Benoit, being the most valuable member of the group, if he agreed to stay, would severely weaken the group as a whole. There was no indication from anywhere in WCW that would remove Sullivan as the booker. And there were wrestlers in the group. Bush told afterwards very nicely he'd be sorry to see them leave. There also appeared to be several attempts to weaken the solidarity of the group throughout the day, being that this is pro wrestling. A group sticking together has never been a strong trait in the business, with few true friends and a general me-first attitude. Benoit was told he was aligning himself with the wrong people and told they had big plans for him. Nash told Perry Saturn similarly not to align himself with prelim guys and told him he deserved a big push and said that he'd work to get him a spot in the NWO. Douglas was told he was promised a major singles push out of the cruiserweight level into the US title picture, which eventually broke him from the group. In a similar divide and conquer action, Conan was the one recipient of the scare tactics, being told by Dylan after the pay-per-view show he was being sent home by management for the time being. The other wrestlers, while some admired the guts of the guys for sticking together, were not unified totally with the general feeling, being that they were risking high-paying guaranteed money contracts that they wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. They tried to lean on Shane by saying that, look, he's injury prone, you're not going to get this kind of money elsewhere. They talked about him being so openly vocal everywhere that he isn't exactly something WWF looks for in talent, as they don't even use Shawn Michaels these days because he's outspoken outside the ring. They talked about Conan, you're not going to get a deal off WWF.
Yeah.
Trying to do this. There's also the size of question. This was the kind of in terms of trying to discourage the guys. WWF has still yet to prove it can get smaller wrestlers over. Maybe a proper term would be to maximize smaller wrestlers. As even one as talented as Chris Jericho, while he is great in ring, has the great ring entrance and is over huge as far as crowd reactions, is still booked in the mid-card territory with the Hollies and China and portrayed as being out of his league even with Rikishi, and doesn't play with the big dogs despite getting a big dog reaction, which is true. And it's something that every time we'll go back to WWF in 2000, and something that maybe people, because of how he was booked in his first tenure, and because his undisputed title reign was the definition of a transitional champion, Jericho, outside of The Rock and Stone Cold and maybe one or two others, was getting the biggest reactions that year.
Yep. I mean, the one we always go back to is
the Dusty finish.
The Dusty finish on Raw. It's April, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Minneapolis, I think, is it?
Yeah, and the crowd goes fucking bananas when they think Jericho's won the title. But yeah, it's true, but Dave is not wrong, or sorry, the people saying it to this group are not wrong that the WWF at that time did not have a history of pushing smaller wrestlers.
Yeah.
They got Taka in 1997 and just did nothing with him. Now, none of these guys are as small as Taka, but they were junior heavyweights.
Yeah.
Eddie wasn't considered a heavyweight guy at that time. Malenko most certainly wasn't.
No.
So, I can understand why people would be like, well, you're not going to go over there and be a player, so why not just stay here?
Yeah. Before Nitro, I've skipped ahead a bit. Before Nitro, Bush met once again with the Revolution members of Benoit. By this point, while nothing was final, it's worth mentioning as well for anybody that kind of maybe forgets from our sold out show. Not only, as we said, did they put Benoit over, but Sid tapped.
Yeah.
They put him over strong. If I was watching this at the time and knew the stuff that was going on behind the scenes that was being reported online, I'd be like, well, they've obviously signed Benoit to a new contract. Because, how stupid would you have to be to put the belt on a guy and have him tap out the guy you've been building for several months as your kind of your 1B behind Goldberg now. Anyway, By this point, while nothing was final, it did appear that Kidman's support of the group was wavering and that neither Guerrero or Conan were at the show. Bush proposed a compromise, saying that he wasn't going to fire Sullivan from the company because he's got a family to support, but suggested that Sullivan be made booker of the WCW Saturday Night Show. The wrestlers were told that they would never have to work the Saturday night tapings if they stayed, and thus Sullivan would have no power over their booking. He also asked the group who they thought would make the strongest booking team, and they suggested Taylor, Anderson and Russo, and the meeting ended amicably but what they thought was a compromise deal. Later in the afternoon, Bush called them in for a second meeting and told all of them except Benoit, who the TV show was scheduled to be built around as new world champion, that they were being sent home. Perhaps partially because the group had filed a complaint with the HR department of Time Warner against road agent Mike Gossett, that's Mike Graham. Mm-hmm. The plan was that heel Commissioner Nash was going to force Benoit into 3 title defenses on the show, with Brian Knobbs.
What is their obsession with this fucking 3 matches in one night thing?
But defending, like Brian Knobbs, now getting a world title shot.
Brian Knobbs just had a big win on the pay-per-view, so.
Yeah. Lex Luger and a third person whose name we're not sure of, and Benoit was to win. Benoit was to win all 3 matches. So clearly they were playing to his ego and giving him a monster push to break him away from the group, which would break the opposition to Sullivan. Clearly management felt this was going to work because there didn't appear to be any major hesitation in putting the title on Benoit the previous day. Benoit said instead if they were being sent home, he was leaving and that they were together as a group. When Bush threatened that if he left with the group he'd be stripped of the title, he doesn't hesitate in saying he was staying with the group, and at this point the group said that at this point they all wanted a full release or for the company to get rid of Sullivan. Reports that Benoit threw the title in the garbage can and stormed off for Nitro were incorrect, as actually the group stayed backstage for some time before the company got them new plane tickets home, and Benoit handed the belt to Nick Patrick before leaving.
Now Taxes is 100% free when you file in the TurboTax app if you didn't file with us last year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just do your own taxes in the app by 2/18.
What if I have lots of forms?
All good, all 100% free.
What if I had 3 jobs?
Still 100% free.
What if I once saw Bigfoot?
That has nothing to do with taxes, so still 100% free.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Now this is Taxes. See if you qualify in the TurboTax app. Excludes TurboTax Live, must start and file in app by 2/18.
A few hours later, Nitro started. The announcers put over the match, showing the clip of Vicious's foot on the ropes while tapping out, and Anderson, as referee, took the blame for the bad decision. They did not bury Benoit in commentary, but did, without quite saying so, give the impression that Vicious was the uncrowned champion. They said the title was held up, an announcement we made on Thunder, which we will also get to. This much was a shoot, as WCW, not expecting Benoit to leave, had no plans for what to do and wasn't going to decide until a booking meeting after the show. Russo was not there. The US title situation was handled clumsily, as they simply gave the belt back to Jarrett after stripping him of it on Friday. With no members of Revolution, The Wall came out, sans Revolution music, with no mention of him being the new member, as per the angle from the previous night.
Oh, that was supposed to be him joining Revolution.
Yes. Kidman, who beat Psychosis in the opener, was given a huge push in commentary about showing, how great he did and how he's no longer a future star. Sullivan was said to be very confident backstage, etc., etc. But basically, look, this is essentially the end of it. Fuck. Like, Conan, oh, by the way, as well, so we talked about how at the start of the pay-per-view there was we saw the pre-taped angle of Conan getting attacked and being written off TV. That was partly because of him being a rumoured part of this group. He got sent home first. So that was to write him off and send him away.
I mean, I would have wished him never to come back, but it's Conan, so he hangs on. But
and it's one of those. So this is another one of the things I was thinking about this situation, and Dave mentions it as well. Is I know Dave is using the current example of Chris Jericho, but also the thing is, no one ever thinks they're going to be the Chris Jericho mid-carder when they go over. They're going to look and see how other defectees have done well. So, as people pointed out, it was crucial that WWE, when they got Cody back, push Cody to the moon, because now it's easier to tempt AEW people to leave when their contracts end.
Yeah,
I would guarantee, and Dave is saying here that there's a lot of people who were thinking of jumping that weren't looking at Chris Jericho. They were looking at two other former WCW talents, Mick Foley and Steve Austin. And that idea that when the talent is undeniable, Vince lets the cream rise to the top, whereas WCW doesn't, unless it suits them.
There would have been a lot of guys that had worked with Austin and understood how good he was. And
there's probably that thing of like, I'd say some people were thinking, yes, look where Jericho is on the card in WWF, but Jericho's only been there like 9 months. And like the first year he was there, Austin was the ringmaster, and he eventually got over it. You know what I mean? Like there's just no one ever. Everybody thinks, and like to this day, you see it in wrestling. It's sometimes pro wrestlers' greatest strengths, and it's often their greatest weaknesses, that they all think they're going to be the face of the company if they jump.
Yeah, I mean, look, Pentagon, fucking L0M, or whatever he's going to be called, doesn't think he's going over there to have a Dragon Lee run. He thinks he's going over there to be fucking, I don't know, fucking Drew McIntyre and earn millions.
Yeah, you name it. Andrade,
yeah.
Spooky Mal Black, Miro. You know what I mean? To a much kind of more personally disappointing level, Ricky Starks, probably. You know what I mean?
But I mean, that's the one. Like, you know, we don't know what the story is with Ricky, but like, do you think Ricky Starks is sitting there going, "Oh man, I'm gonna have that Ethan Page run"? Yeah. No, he's thinking, "I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna be like fucking Cody and I'm gonna reach the top of this fucking company."
Yeah, and like again, on talent and personality, should get a crack at it. But like, if we're all being real about it, unlikely.
He's also very small.
Yeah. There's also, I think, if AEW didn't exist and they got Cody back, they would have had another Stardust run. Like, I do think a lot of the Cody thing is the pressure that they had to.
You don't think Vince is taking the guy that, you know, worked mid-card in the Dome for New Japan and pushed him straight to the moon?
All I'm saying is, even with all that, where was he during the launch of Raw? In the crowd like a fucking geek during the Rock's promo this week. They can't fucking help themselves. Like,
well, the Rock talked about
Vince is gone, but all the people who are running it now, who were they taught by?
As the flagship guy said, the Rock is in the ring, Cody's in the crowd. Well, the Rock talks about fucking his mom.
Yeah. Okay. There's some more stuff. I'm just going to kind of clip through it. I'm not even going to read the passages out of the Observer. Basically, pay-per-view numbers are doing even worse than they thought. They're doing horrendously. I was surprised at the polls in the Observer. Majority were parked at thumbs in the middle for sold out rather than thumbs down. Which I think a majority saying thumbs in the middle is probably the best reviewed Sold Out of all time, because Sold Out has been an historically bad show every single year.
It's absolutely the best Sold Out.
Yeah. It's like damning with faint praise, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have as well, again, you want to talk about harbingers and house shows always being the canary in the coal mine. Paul Heyman announced this week that they were scaling back the amount of house shows that ECW would do. They had hoped that when ECW launched on TNN, the new exposure would help them sell out 4 house shows a week. But that's not been the case, and now it's going to be like 2 to 3 house shows a week. One thing that shows even a blind squirrel would occasionally find a nut. Do you know who WCW are interested in bringing in around this time?
Oh God, who?
And this will show you that, like, they clearly, with Da Block and with Tank Abbott, they had an idea that they wanted some more shooters on the roster. And look, come on, I'm always down for that, because like every time you find a Tank Abbott, you might find someone who's pretty good. They wanted to bring in Don Fry.
Wow. Okay.
I tell you, I would fucking lock the fuck in for a Don Fry WCW run.
Hey, listen, if Reed Russo had suggested that Don Fry win that fucking Rumble that Sold Out, things could have been much, much different.
The other two small historical tidbits, just to tell you where we are, is Austin had his neck surgery this week. More on that in the weeks to come as his recovery scales up. He will be back on TV Backlash.
Yes, Backlash is for... I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah.
Back, like 3 months from now, when he returns at Backlash and cannot move his head.
Yes, like Batman in the fucking suit. And then an interesting one that I just caught at the very end of the WWF notes. This week, signed to a developmental contract, a 19-year-old third-generation superstar called Randall Orton.
Well, he'll never amount to anything, will he?
It's just mad. That's how he's been with the company for 25 years.
Yep.
That's crazy. But yeah, there we are.
Not a bag was safe after that point.
I'm blown up, brother. That was...
You've done a lot of work there.
Yeah. Right, let's actually talk about this goddamn episode of Thunder, which was shocking, by the way.
It wasn't good.
Not many. No. Wasn't the worst.
No,
wasn't
but
good.
Like you said, stuff happened. It's just not a lot of good stuff happened.
So much stuff happened. Tonight we'll find out the fate of the world title, we're told. The NWO arrive in the building with the returning Scott, with Jeff, and a woman who had appeared with NWO towards the end of last year, but not on Thunder, who would soon go on to be known by a different name.
Mid-Asia?
No, this was Tylene, wasn't it?
Oh, it was Major Guns. Yeah.
Yeah,
no, because I was looking at her going, it's not Mid-Asia, and I was like,
Mid-Asia, no.
You know when you're kind of you're not looking as closely, but
we're also watching the old VHS transfers.
Yes,
so the resolution is not crystal clear. You're talking a 240p at best on some of these transfers we have. Thanks WWE Network for fucking off.
Well, don't fucking nobody's missing that network. You also forgot that one thing we will answer tonight is what type of man are you?
Oh, God.
Because if there's one thing we hear a lot on this show...
Yeah. We certainly do. People asking what kind of men people are. Yeah. Our opener is a WCW World Tag Team Title match. Crowbar versus Gormless Idiot David Flair with Daphne versus the Mamalukes, Big Vito and Johnny the Bull with the Disco Inferno. This will follow the trend of me having very little to write about any wrestling maneuvers on this show.
Let's just say that the matches are nothing to write home. Like, there's no actual notable action in any of the matches.
Yeah, it is. It's not good wrestling. I don't think anyone will be shocked by that.
It's also not
bad either.
It's not Russo-esque either. It's not 2 minutes in and out.
It's so the kind of match you would drill into trainees that they could do in their sleep, like 3 or 4 minute matches. That just so unspectacular, so heatless.
Do you know what they were?
What?
It was like matches you would have seen on Dark during the pandemic.
Yeah, except without the nod and a wink and Taz singing people's theme songs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Instead, you have Tony Schiavone wondering what a Mamaluke is.
This is tremendous, right?
So Disco joins them on commentary.
And there's a bit where he says, he gets on, and Tenay says, what's a... Oh, yeah. He goes, hey, Disco, what's a Mamaluke? And Disco goes, hey, watch your mouth. And then...
He calls Tony a Mamaluke.
Yeah, and Tony's asking what a Mamaluke is, and Tenay has a couple of great ones on this show. One much better later on, but he goes, hold on, your name is Schiavone, and you're asking Scott Hudson what a Mamaluke is?
He's like, don't you have a cousin called Vito?
And he goes, well, I had a cousin Vito, and an uncle Vito, actually. There is an extremely contrived finish to this match. where Crowbar bonks into... So David Flair, fucking gormless idiot that he is, clearly completely blew his timing for this finish, because he gets the crowbar and stands up on the apron, and a full 10 plus seconds passes before the actual spot he's supposed to be there for. So he's just stood there doing his Street Fighter idling pose back and forth with his crowbar.
That's a perfect description, because he's like, do I get in the ring? Do I get in the ring? I don't know whether I get in the ring or not.
He's paralyzed with fear. Crowbar is bonked into the crowbar at 2 miles an hour, and the Mamalukes roll him up. No. They win.
No, Vito hits the Impaler.
Oh, he hits the Impaler. Excuse me.
Yeah.
And then rolls him up and wins. And then David and Daff make out, because God forbid that we think a title change is the most important thing to happen in this match.
I do love that Disco is now referring to himself as the manager of champions.
This is the new thing they're running with him. It's worth noting as well, they talk about the Cruiserweight title has been stripped as well. They don't mention it right now, but it is very strongly alluded to later on that the storyline reason is Oklahoma was stripped of the title for being too fat. This also, by the way... Actually, no. Do you know what? I'll get to it later. I have more to say about Oklahoma, but we'll wait. Nash, in his giant blazer, tries to get into the committee meeting. There's a championship committee meeting backstage happening. It's so totally WCW that even in storyline, they're waiting until the last possible minute to make a decision about the world title. They've had 2 days since Nitro in storyline, and they're just like, do you know what, we might actually get together while the show's already on the air to make a call.
Yeah, no such thing as a conference call. They all have to be in a locker room backstage in fucking Evansville.
Guarded by the worst extras you've ever seen. He says, okay, we'll see who has the big guns. Vito, like a post-match championship celebration interview backstage with Gino, Vito says they put the smack in the face of those guys. So there you go. That's how they won. They dosed them up with smack. They did it for their families, did it for their mothers. Disco tries to take the title off them as their manager and celebrate, and they say, why did you act like you're part of this family by taking someone out? Next up, in a sign of, man, on Thunder they just fucking throw random people out who are around. Fucking Jim Duggan is back out.
And if you weren't aware, over the past 8 months, Hacksaw Jim Duggan will not slander the USA Dev.
No, he will not. He gets interrupted very quickly by Hennig in his tactical turtleneck.
No, a cut-off tactical turtleneck.
Yeah, Christian needs to get on this level. Duggan challenges him to come down to the ring. Hennig turns to leave, gets called a coward, and of course, because of that, he runs down and we have a match. Fuck's sake. Like, Kurt Hennig, who is...
Did we have a match, though?
We had something happened. Kurt Hennig, who's completely washed, against Jim Duggan, who, even if you rewound the clock on this guy in his youth, he was not going to give you anything great. Now, there was one of the classic hallmarks that Hennig could still pull out every now and then, is to do such a crazy over-the-top bump.
Yeah, the corner bump, yeah.
Yeah. I saw, what was it? Who was it gave him? I watched a clip of him in Japan taking a lariat and landing directly on the top of his head when he was much younger, much more slender. And I was like, that guy just fucking knew when to take a crazy bump. And there's one point here where Jim Duggan hits him with a big wind-up uppercut, and he uppercut him so hard he shot out of his boots over the rope to the floor. Yeah. Incredible.
He did the old exaggerated Hennig selling, yeah.
Yeah. I look, you know, that still makes me smile, even when he can't do anything else. Back and forth. Why is this match? I wrote. Duggan did a 10 punch. Hennig throws Duggan into the ref. Hennig tries to use the 2x4, gets caught. Duggan swings at him. Hennig pushes Mickey J directly into the path of the slowly swinging 2x4, and Hennig bails. No contest.
I wonder what Mickey J did to Hacksaw Duggan for him to viciously attack him like this.
Just bean him, yeah. God. Let me get 3 count dancing. And I just, every time I'm just like this. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's the perfect heel heat geek gimmick for 2000 Southern wrestling promotion.
You missed the first instance of Kevin Nash asking somebody what type of man they are.
Yes.
Because
I kind of didn't.
Him and Steiner are shouting at a guy with a laptop.
This is again clearly one of those. This is clearly an in-joke that they think is really fucking funny, because this is the first time. It's not the last time on this show.
No.
I know I have one instance of it written down, but you'll have to remind me of all the other ones. People start popping like crazy. I will say, the camera did a good job of zooming in and you not seeing why they're popping. So for a second, it does look like they're popping for the routine. But sadly, no. It's Norman Smiley coming in a gi, a helmet, and full fucking pads. Norman takes them all out to a disproportionately huge reaction, which is, again, another indication that this is great heel heat, because, like, I know Norman is getting over, but he's not as over as this Evansville pop would let you believe.
I did like the commentators going...
This was a Road Warrior pop, like.
I did like the commentators going, this isn't the Norman we know. He's actually beating up people.
Yeah. And this is... I will say, I laughed at Norman's promo. He goes, there, I've just beaten up 3 of the toughest and most feared wrestlers in WCW. How dare Kevin Nash say I have no courage? I eat hardcore food. I breathe hardcore air. I have hardcore blood in my veins. I'll fight anyone. And instantly, Tank Abbott comes out and he runs away.
Yeah. Perfect.
Then Tank Abbott, Terminator, T-1000 walks after him until Norman trips over his own feet on the ramp. One knockout punch. And Mike Tenay, right? I am sorry to our good friends Garrett Kidney and Liam Jones.
Oh no, was he cancelled?
No, they have chronicled on their excellent podcast, you've got to be kidding me, tnachat.com, many of the great Mike Tenay moments in history. Oh shit, it's Vince Russo being maybe my favorite.
Personal favourite, yeah.
This... Did you catch this? Maybe the single greatest line delivery in Mike Tenay's illustrious career, where Tank Abbott stands over Norman Smiley, hits him with one punch, knocks him completely unconscious, and completely stone-faced, Mike Tenay says, Norman Smiley was 32. I fucking lost it.
Yep.
It was so simple.
And then they went straight to
somebody...
break as well.
Yeah. As if like they
That's
had
the
to
best part.
peel him off the ramp with a spatula during the break.
Yeah.
Okay, so Nash backstage instructs the Harris brothers to investigate the committee meeting. A fucking god-awful 3-way match happens next. Again, you ask yourself why with so many of the matches in this show. Lash LaRue versus Psychosis versus Chavo. And again, childhood me loved a bit of Lash. Adult us loves a bit of Psychosis. Chavo was also there. And this was a fucking mess.
Well, Chavo was still a salesman for some reason.
Yes.
Psycho is now just wrestling in place of Hoovy.
Yes.
Who was getting all the character development.
And did another one of his horrible Juice promos where he says he's in the wrong town.
And Lash looked as bad as he's ever looked. I thought he looked horrendous
worse
in this match.
He looked like he'd regressed. Like, he looked like he wasn't up to the standard of either man. And you know what it takes for me to say that Chavo is above somebody on the totem pole here. Now, I will say, Chavo did hit a cool float over DDT.
He did. Looked really good.
In this, yeah.
The finish fucking stunk, though, because Chavo hit a tornado DDT straight away after that on Lash.
Yeah.
And Psycho took about, at least 18 minutes to set himself up on the top rope.
Yeah.
And then hit the guillotine leg drop on the wrong person?
I don't know.
Or was he trying to do it to both of them at the same time? And
maybe it's that thing you do.
Tailbone?
So it's that thing you do in the video game when both men are out. You guillotine leg drop the man, one of the men, and then pin the other one.
It looked like he was trying to do it to both, but he missed Chavo by a good distance and kind of hit Lash.
Yeah. Anyway, that was horrible. We see Kidman walking to the ring. We get an ad for WCW magazine.
Whoa,
then we finally...
You missed out.
Oh, no.
The artist's recording session
number 4. No, that's next. That's next.
Oh, was it before the break?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
It was after the WCW magazine ad. So we finally get the payoff to the recording sessions of the artist as we finally hear him sing, and he sounds like a chipmunk on acid. Paisley loves it look, I'm just going to say it. Loves it to the point of climax, I would say, based on her reaction. Whereas the producers full on pissing themselves laughing in the booth at how bad he is. Now, I go two ways at this, right? They have invested a long period of time in building up this artist character.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, as I said, it is a pretty rad entrance and theme song.
Mm-hmm.
So on one side of it, I'm mad that after all this, it's for a comedy. He's a fucking horrible singer and a doofus, kind of Gillian Hall level kind of situation, right? But then the other side of me is like, it's IKEA. Like, they could have made him sound like actual Prince, and this gimmick was still going to flop. So really, what kind of loss is it?
See, I think it's perfect because he sounds like a kind of middle of the road SoundCloud mumble rapper.
Yeah.
And like he's full on just Prince now. Like that, like even down to the pencil beard and the mumbling of the lyrics and stuff. It's like just it's not even it's just Prince, but
except again, crucially, Prince was great.
Yes, obviously. But I don't think it matters that it's IKEA, because he doesn't need to be a good wrestler. It's all about the gimmick now.
Well, thank God, because he's not.
Oh, he's not, and he never will be.
He's one of the most boring wrestlers to ever walk the earth.
I just think it's genius in a way, because his wrestling no longer matters.
Yeah. But, and again, it pays into what we said before is one of our favourite recurring gimmicks in WCW history, which is repackage and push IKEA and then immediately have him lose loads.
Yeah, but now he can just be this guy for the remainder of the run.
And he is.
And just be like an undercard comedy guy.
Yeah. I can't remember if he ever gets repackaged again. Like, he gets shortened to just the artist.
Yes.
But I think this is his last. I don't think he gets repackaged again.
Are you not going to be referring to him as Taff Cappy?
No, I'm not, in spite of their efforts to do so on this show.
You weren't behind Scott Hudson coming up with Taff Cappy?
Well, I'll put it to you this way, right? This match, Kidman versus IKEA, my first note on it is more like the fartist.
Got him.
So that you got absolutely fucking got his ass.
Nailed him.
Done for. Fuck all happening in this match until Tori Wilson makes her return to television in what I suppose I could politely describe as a physics-defying snakeskin number.
Sure.
Like, the FCC were by the red phone for the entire time this segment was on, because, like, something... She was a brisk movement away from a Janet Jackson-type incident.
TBS were sitting there twitching over the button.
Just covered in sweat.
Croucher.
How was it the week after they lost Russo? We're at the most risk of something like this happening.
Well, see, no, Russo would have had her, as a hostage backstage while wearing that outfit.
Kidman beats IKEA without having to break a sweat. Hits him with a sky high like 2 minutes into this match.
Yeah.
Not even a shooting star.
No,
didn't even need the primary finisher.
Didn't need to put the knees through it that night.
Has he beaten?
No.
I can't remember.
No,
has he
this is
ever
the first
beaten
time.
anybody with this? And then Tori and Kidman make out to celebrate. So we've had 4 matches on this show. No, 3 matches on this show.
2 of them ended with
And
makeout.
2 of them ended it with makeouts.
See, the women are respected now that because Russo was gone, Dave.
Yeah. Terry Taylor emerges from the meeting to head to the ring. Terry is now in the ring with an announcement. He says they've agonized over the last 72 hours and it's been made more difficult with the appointment of Kevin Nash as commissioner. Next Monday in LA, a new undisputed champion will be crowned. The committee have selected Sid Vicious as a participant and Commissioner Kevin has to pick the other one. Nash out saying he read his handbook on the toilet. He makes the matches. Says if the crowd chants Goldberg, he's going to fire the son of a bitch because they'd started chanting Goldberg. Says Sid has to go through Jeff first on Monday. Jeff Jarrett has a line about how the bigger the slap nuts, the harder they fall, which got absolutely nowhere. But I laughed. Nash then, shockingly, selects himself to face Sid for the title if he survives Jeff.
You also forgot to mention that Kevin Nash did in fact ask Terry Taylor what type of a man he was.
Yes. God damn. Nash books Booker T and Big T as a tag against Sid and Package.
Can they coexist, Dave?
Yeah. Next up, Berlyn versus The Wall. One note, I guess, from the start of this, The Wall has The Wall music now.
Yes, he does.
That I cannot hear without thinking of him standing on top of a hotel, but more on that in a couple of months. One single man in the Evansville crowd tried to get an Alex Wright chant going.
This will tell you how dead this crowd was. For a good 30 seconds, you hear one person going, Alex Wright, Alex Wright.
And then one much louder person chanting boring.
Yes.
How fucking boring was this match?
Pretty fucking bad. So bad that I actually took notes that they announced if Jeff Jarrett beats Sid on Nitro, Kevin Nash is in fact a world champion.
Yeah, not Jeff.
No.
Yeah, Kevin Nash wins the title by default.
Isn't that the sweetest sentence of all?
Yeah, which by the end of 2001 wouldn't be the weirdest way someone won or lost a championship in this company.
No, that is true.
Berlyn tries to do a leap up into the corner and slips, and people just start laughing.
Yeah. That's you really can't come back from that.
Yeah, Wall is real bad at this stage. Like, there's a certain element to which somewhere through 2000, like, he's done become a great worker, but he learns how to be a big guy wrestler. He ain't there right now.
No.
It's just bad. He's very awkward. He's being booked. In fairness, this isn't to do with him, but the booking of the Wall, he bumps around way too much for everybody.
Also,
especially someone that no one gives a fuck about in Berlin.
They don't know what they're doing with him because he's a face one day and a heel the next. And
yeah, this time I'll give them a little bit of slack because they had him set up to join the Revolution, and now the entire Revolution is gone.
The Revolution has in fact led a revolution backstage.
It's been televised, but over on the other TV channel.
Just like Ricky Starks.
Yeah. Berlyn shakes out of the chokeslam, but then turns around and runs directly into a big boot and loses. Old man DDP doing his yoga stretches. Oklahoma comes out and you can hear you see a single incel cheering him in the crowd. He cuts another horrendously sexist promo. Talks about how he bounced Medusa's silicone titties right back to the kitchen. He relinquishes the title. Now, Lee, I looked it up on Cage Match. Oklahoma never wrestles again for WCW, which also means he relinquishes the martial arts
Yes, he
division
does.
championship.
I was going to bring this up. He relinquished not one, but 2 titles.
A phenomenal 3-day reign.
And what
The
a,
martial arts division
and what a reign.
Oh, he beat them all.
I mean, when you look up legendary reigns,
This is right up there.
it's going to be him, Luther, right there next to
This
each
is like
other.
right up there with the Kobashi 2-year reign.
So we're going to have a new martial arts division champion. And I have
at the pay-per-view.
no. I have decided when we are going to crown this.
Have
new
you looked
champion.
ahead this time?
No,
you don't
I have
fuck
not looked
yourself
ahead.
over? Okay.
I refuse to look ahead, Dave.
Okay. You refuse to have forethought because that requires some work in
Yes.
between these shows.
So we will be covering the next Monday Nitro, correct?
Yes.
So I have had a thought that
A special Knights of Nitro Raw is War simulcast.
Yes.
By the way.
So how's this for a thought? The martial arts division title will be decided not in the main event, Dave,
Okay.
but in the semi-main of that episode of Nitro, whatever that match may be.
Okay.
And you're looking it up now, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not.
okay. I thought you were looking it up, but whatever.
No, I thought about it, but then I was like, actually, no. It'll help me get through Nitro if I just watch it and then laugh because it's going to be something as bad as this probably.
Whatever the semi-main may be, whether it's a
There's definitely people listening to this that are looking it up now.
tag team match, a 3-way match, a good housekeeping match, whatever it may be, whatever person wins that match will be the new martial arts division champion.
So for clarity, we think we have our dates right, but this is the Monday Nitro, the night that the Radicals debut on Raw.
Yes.
That is the Nitro we will be covering. So whether that's, I'm pretty sure that's the next Nitro, but if it's not, then another week, and it'll be that Nitro. The Nitro we cover, basically.
Who knows?
God help us all.
Rat may return.
And look, by what happened. Look, by what happens next, something I completely memory hold, it literally anyone could show up and have a match. Because Medusa runs out, running him down, saying that she should take the belt from him. He shouldn't relinquish it. He says if she wants, a fight can be arranged. And Lee, if you had given me 100 guesses, I would not have guessed that Medusa gets attacked by, in her only match we will see in WCW, Sherry fucking Martel.
Yeah, what the fuck? I did not know this happened.
No, did not remember this at all.
I'm disappointed to find out it's her only match, but
yes.
God.
Never wrestles again in this company. In fact, would not be surprised if it turns out we never see her again in this company.
I from listening to different stuff, I believe Sherry had a lot of the personal issues around this time.
Yes.
So that's somewhat understandable that they didn't hire her full time. But just fucking out of nowhere, Sherry versus Medusa, like in an impromptu match.
Sherry in the very suitable wrestling gear of baggy leather pants and a pink top.
Yeah.
Miss Hancock comes out straight away.
Yeah.
Standards and practices. I am now realizing that there's a possibility, right? So do you remember when the Timeless Tony thing started?
Yes.
And Timeless Tony did a match, or no, there was a match happening in the ring, and Tony was spreading herself across the announce table, and Tony was covered in a puddle of sweat, trying not to look at her. Right?
Do you think it was a callback to this?
I think it may have been a callback to this, where like the camera cuts several times to Tony fucking leering. There's the bits where he has the tunnel vision and he's trying to make it very clear he's not looking at her.
Yes.
But then there's the bit where it cuts to her and he's clearly staring at her and he goes, and now we'll take a long leg. I mean a long look.
between Gene Okerlund and Tony Schiavone, these shows are getting to be quite horny.
Yes. Poor Lois. Anyway, Sherry falls off the top rope. Both Sherry, Medusa, and the referee panic, and they just go to the finish. Medusa hits one kick, does the float over suplex, and wins. And Sherry never wrestles again in the company, as I said. Backstage, Kevin Nash is stressed. Does he say about what kind of man somebody is here, Lee?
I just have this one down as NWO backstage nonsense.
Okay, yeah, he's stressed. We get a singles match up next. Fucking thank God you're sitting down for this one, Lee. Fit Finlay versus Jerry Flynn.
It's a match.
Buzzkill is in the crowd as well, with a stop the violence sign. Knobs comes out. Finlay distracts the ref to let Knobs put the boots to him. Finlay misses a corner charge, gets kicked to bits. Whip does the spin kick deal. Perhaps the greatest, you know, the way the crowd, we said the crowd is so dead you can hear single people shouting. Mm-hmm. Did you hear the greatest heckle of all time as soon as he took out the kendo stick here?
No.
Knobs takes out the kendo stick, and one single man stands up and proudly shouts, "You're no just incredible."
What? You are joking.
I fucking died.
That's incredible. Quite literally, that is an incredible heckle.
Yeah. Like, I would just, if I heard that and I was Knobs, I would drop the kendo stick, walk backstage and retire.
You would do the...
Done in the business.
The full-on Michael Cera fucking...
Yeah, the Charlie Brown walk, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
Oh, God. That's made my night. That's brilliant.
Accidentally hits Finlay with the kendo stick, who then gets rolled up. The camo dorks argue after the bell. And we see DDP and Canyon on the way out. Canyon isn't happy to be here, and he isn't happy because he already beat DDP and says he has nothing to prove. Kim comes out by herself with full pyro.
Yeah, isn't it telling that Kim got the full-on pyro?
Yeah. Canyon asks to can the cheesy rip-off music, which is like, it is cheesy rip-off music, but it's also good, and he shouldn't say that because it draws attention to it being cheesy rip-off music. Canyon asks her to come into the ring and be a real man, which she responds to by taking off her top, and says maybe they'll talk about it. Then DDP, who is supposed to be the babyface of these two, sneak attacks him from behind. Start the match. Like, DDP had been a heel, but they have been turning him back face.
Oh no, he is face now.
He's just a cook.
He just now
everyone's shagging his wife.
Yeah, he just now uses his marital problems to distract his opponents. Apparently.
Yeah. The match is all right. Like, it's DDP and Canyon. It's not going to be bad. DDP hits a fucking world class Uranagi in this. Mm-hmm. Like, plants him like a fence post into the ring. Whip reverse. Canyon does a cool slide under wrist lock into a pump handle. Biggs gets up on the apron. Canyon puts on the brakes, but DDP knocks them into each other. Cutter attempt reversed into a backslide attempt and a mule kick. Canyon goes up top, countered by Page into a powerbomb. Canyon goes to swing the case at him. Duck running diamond cutter for the win. Then we get Big T and Lex talking to each other backstage as the other two guys warm up, and that's when Scott Steiner shouts, "What kind of men are they?" at the TV, which is the one time I noted them saying that.
Again, Scott Steiner, the only guy with actual comedy chops.
Yeah. We get a little bit of a snack talk interlude, Lee, where I want to get hear from the masses. Please tell me. We saw two commercials here on our version. One was for the cheeseburger variety of Hot Pocket.
They look horrendous.
And I gotta know, the only things I know about Hot Pockets is the running joke in multiple TV shows and movies that because of the way they are cooked, the internal temperature of Hot Pockets is akin to fucking lava.
Yes. That's the only thing I know.
I need to know, are Hot Pockets actually good?
I think
because
there was a segment on the flagship like 10 years ago where they talked about Hot Pockets.
Now, my impression has always been they're good as a cheap snack. They're the kind of snack that you would be able to pop into the microwave or the oven when you got home from school. They're not a gourmet option by any stretch, but they really did a job.
I think aren't they like these things that you would put you put them in like a special sleeve and you cook them in the microwave?
Yeah.
But then every time you would take them out of the microwave, all the contents would be in the sleeve.
Yeah. So a little bit of a write-in about that in the Voices of Wrestling Discord or the Days of Thunder channel would be appreciated. The other thing I want to talk about, I'm just going to use the 2 words, and if anybody ever had it, I want you to tell me about it. Jolly Time Blast O' Butter. I don't feel I need to talk any more about that. If you know what that is, then please tell me about it. I saw these 2 words and I was like, that's just a lot of compound words happening there.
That's a lot of information and not any at all at the same time.
I could feel my arteries clogging as I read the words Jolly Time Blast O' Butter. Blast O' Butter, 1 word, by the way.
I want to say Jolly Time Blast O' Butter sounds like something you would buy in a adult store.
I was going to say Jolly Time Blast O' Butter sounds like a really fat leprechaun.
Well, like the off-brand Lucky Charms guy.
yeah, that's Jolly Time Blast O' Butter. Our main event, can you even believe it, is here. Big T and Booker T with Midnight, who we thought was done, versus Sid Vicious and the Total Package. Fuck, this sucked.
Yep. Best thing about this match was Sid. Again.
Yeah.
Sid working the crowd.
Test of strength going.
Yeah, getting the crowd riled up for a fucking test of strength with Tony Norris.
Yeah, and people got into it, and then Big T begs off.
Yeah.
We are a minute into this match, and Nash comes out smiling. I did laugh that they did the classic WWF trope of they held the camera on this guy way longer than he was comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
The teams deliberately... so the teams that were deliberately set up to fall apart and fight with each other, and Mike Tenay is shocked.
I have one problem with this match. What does Kevin Nash have against Booker T? What has Booker T ever done to Kevin Nash?
This is one of those things that either it's out of nowhere right now, or it's something they've only ever referred to on Nitro and never on Thunder. Because it is like they're doing this with basically saying, and of course we all know the deep and abiding history between Kevin Nash and Booker T, and no, we don't.
Like, Sid is in no way affected by what happens in this match.
They did cross paths. I know they've crossed paths, but it's not like there was this big, long, deep, 6-9 month feud between the two of them.
No, because Booker's in a feud about the fucking letter T, or is about to be.
Yeah, I don't know. Gotta be said as well, fucking Stevie, nowhere to be found here.
No.
So Stevie had been in exactly where Nash was, standing out, watching this, waiting for it to fall apart, it would make way more sense.
Or if Stevie had, went to his former NWO mate, Kevin Nash, looking for a favour.
Yeah. Gotta love legendarily good wrestler Big T here, who eats a chokeslam from Sid and then immediately rolls out and barely sells it, Austin Aries style. Package racks Booker T and Booker taps, which I was kind of surprised by. Because, what the fuck is Package right now? Why is, of these 4 guys, why is Booker T the one tapping? I know Sid is not going to be the one to lose. That's fine. Nash cackles. This is the other thing, right? So you were talking about what's the thing with Booker. The tack I took in my head is Nash cackled and walked off job done. But the one guy he wanted hurt in this match that would be to his benefit is Sid.
Yeah, and nothing happens.
Who's the only one of the 4 of them that is completely unscathed at the end of this match.
Yeah. So
And
dumb.
that's the end of the show.
So dumb.
That's your go home. That's your go home for Sid versus Nash. Is Nash cackling as Booker T taps out to a torture act?
No, Dave. That's your go home for Sid versus Jarrett, where Kevin Nash come in the world title.
Yeah, because we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah.
Talk about setting the stage for their big LA debut.
I know, right? Fuck. Right, Lee, tell me overall thoughts on the show, winners and losers.
Show fucking
please.
stunk.
Yeah. But still, like, you're kind of with that abiding thought, aren't you? It's like it's definitely nowhere near the worst.
Oh no, but like, just nothing good happened on the show.
Yeah. There was times in the show where I feared nothing good would ever happen to me again.
I think Kidman is the only guy on the show that's getting some semblance of a good push.
Yeah.
And that's because also Conan's not with him anymore. He actually he had his own music back as well, which I'm always happy to hear.
Yeah.
Not that fucking Filthy Animals music.
But anyway, yeah.
And the Mamelukes. I like the Mamelukes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Oh, we like the Mamelukes around here. The finish counter brought to you by Ludwig Borga. 9 matches with shockingly 7 clean finishes.
Actually, it seems to be said we like the Mamelukes. Do you think Vito still listens?
Hope so. Big ups, Vito, one of our most beloved Instagram followers. 7 clean finishes.
I just had that thought.
Yeah. Vito was big into the show. Vito and Brian Clark, big into this. There's a few current day wrestlers, and I'm not going to out any of them necessarily for watching it or listening to a WCW podcast. But in terms of like firmly retired wrestlers we could talk about, there was quite a while where Brian Clark and Vito were super into our content.
I missed.
And like, if you had said when you started recording this podcast, it's like, who are the 2 WCW wrestlers who would give you a following? I would be like, I don't know.
Yeah, it just came into my head. It's like, we're putting over the Mamelukes. Yeah. It just, Vito hasn't given us a hit on Instagram recently, so.
Yeah. Hit us up, Vito. Hit us up. So 7 clean finishes, 1 interference leading directly to a finish, and 1 non-finish via 2x4 no contest. That was another episode of Days of Thunder. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be back in 1 week over at largemanappears.com and 2 weeks here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Thank you very much for listening. A happy new year to all of you, and we shall speak soon. Bye-bye. Thanks everyone for listening to another episode of Days of Thunder. Days of Thunder was produced by Lee Malone and edited by me, Dave Ryan. Keep up to date with the show and find all the ways to listen to us. You can follow us on Twitter at WCW Thunderpod or click the Linktree link in our Twitter bio or in the show notes. I am at the Day to Dave on Twitter and Lee is at Malone_713. Days of Thunder is a part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Follow the VOW network anywhere good podcasts are sold for more fine podcasts than you can shake a stick at. Thanks.
Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.
Taxes was waiting around for your taxes to be done, which led to worrying about not getting any money back. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes in a day to get you up to $4,000 fast with a refund advance loan. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Expert filing only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Refund advance has $0 loan fees and 0% APR. Refund advance loans may be issued by First Century Bank, N.A. or WebBank. Terms apply. Subject to approval.